the things that have come your way that have supported you in your life through family or friends or teachers or in whatever way it's come. Maybe it seems like it's through chance or karma, those blessings in your life. Maybe through your furry friends, joy and happiness, support. And with thoughts like these, see if there is a springing up of loving kindness, friendliness. That open hearted feeling of caring, of kindness. That can shine from the heart. And as we pay attention to it, can become boundless, filling our whole being, and going out in all directions. And notice what words, what thoughts, what images help to bring that about and how it affects you. Because the whole time we want to be aware and mindful of what's happening, what we're experiencing. Traditionally, it says fill 1/4 with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise, the second, likewise, the third, likewise, the fourth. Is feeling that all around and above and below. With that friendliness, that warmth, that goodwill. All through us and all around us. And then abide pervading with that mind of loving kindness. To all the world. Everywhere. Abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. And from this foundation of loving kindness, when someone comes to mind that we find challenging, we can have a response of compassion, knowing that those challenges stem from suffering. And we see the suffering, the vulnerability in others, and the kindness in ourselves. We can feel that sincere wish for their suffering to end, and the forgiveness, the understanding of where those words and actions that cause harm come from. The harm to oneself and the harm to others, knowing that it comes out of pain, suffering. And we all know what that feels like. And the Buddha so masterfully pointed at dukkha as the first step, the awareness of dukkha and the understanding of dukkha as the first step to freedom from it. How beautiful. Something we can wish with both compassion and loving kindness for all beings everywhere, including ourselves. And that true compassion is not downpulling, it's a heavenly state, filled with wisdom and understanding and letting go. And we also see the joy, the goodness in ourselves and in others, the kindness, the generosity, the moral virtue, the self-sacrifice for the happiness and well-being of others, the nobility. We can see it in every context. There's always some representation of that goodness. And with that, we can rejoice. Mudita, available right there along with metta and karuna. And finally, as you probably know, there is upekkha, equanimity. The response that we can have when we see the unwholesome, the wisdom of it, knowing the suffering the unwholesome causes, the Kama, but also knowing that this is a mixed realm of bright and dark. We can bear with the circumstances and bring light into the world through our love, our compassion, our joy, and our equanimity, with patience, with endurance, and faith in the Dhamma, living according to the Dhamma. It makes every aspect of life beautiful, even the most challenging parts. Every relationship beneficial in what we learn and what we can do to transform our own minds from ignorance to wisdom, from the unskillful to the skillful. From the sense of self to living according to the Dhamma, and freedom from suffering. All right, there was a little more oomph in that bill than I thought. Nice calming voice. I'm almost asleep, and then the thing I get accused most of is putting people to sleep during guided meditation. So maybe that's a good thing. I mean, if it doesn't get any worse than that. But who knows, right? Because life has so many ups and downs. So today I want to put some emphasis on the Brahmaviharas and take it from a particular context. So we've been having some conversations and yesterday teachings around this idea of how we can show up in challenging situations and times of confrontation with people who think very differently than we do or might have very different views and opinions, how to let go of our own clinging to views and opinions and see the difference between our views and what is really Dhamma. Dhamma is not actually a view, even though we talk about right view, which is in alignment with Dhamma. Dhamma is the natural truth of how things work, whether we've ever heard of Buddhism or not, or any religion, at the basis of human experience. If we're paying attention, if we recognize that we can be present with what we experience, then we learn. If we inquire and we're dedicated to truth, we come to know the Dhamma, regardless of where we take birth or what the circumstances are. It's available. Whether there's a Buddha in the world or not, the Buddha said the Dhamma is there. Whether things are really rocky or they're pretty peaceful, the Dhamma is still there. So fortunately, we have the teachings of the Buddha to help us see that and to know what to look for and to know how to sort that out from um, the views and opinions that we may have formed and that we've been conditioned by. All these all these experiences conditioning us. So when we are in these situations, whether it's with friends or family or um, where we work or whatever our the context is, when we find ourselves at odds with others, how can we show up in that in a way that brings more peace, more um, more light, more awareness, more knowledge, more kindness? So I want to look at the Brahmaviharas from that perspective. And part of meeting these experiences is also to prepare ourselves. So practice, whether it's, excuse me, the practice is a lot more than the formal meditation practice, of course. It's involves every aspect of our life, really. Dhamma is um, a lifestyle. And when we want to live in accordance with the Dhamma, it really can help us in everything we do. And so when we know we have to have a conversation with someone that's going to be a little challenging, we can prepare ourselves, or even knowing, um, especially I'm thinking about the situations, sometimes we talk about how to take care of aging parents, for example. Sometimes those relationships are challenging, very difficult. Maybe there's a lot of history that's pretty unpleasant or not. There's still a lot of ways in which we can get triggered. And before you walk in that room, you can think, okay, when this happens, I know they're going to say that, and then I'm going to feel like this. Or ahead of time, you already know the script. and um, and it's amazing how powerful mindfulness is, because we can be present with that feeling arising, that reaction that's been conditioned into us. And we can choose not to act on that, not to speak from that place, not to, say what we usually would say that then leads to the next wave of challenge and difficulty or whatever it is. And so one part of that preparation is knowing um, our own patterns and spending time being present with how those patterns unfold, how they get triggered, and what happens. It's really important to use the first three noble truths to work with our dukkha, understanding it, understanding our specific wiring that involves the cause of the dukkha. What is it really in my conventional makeup, my personality, my personal history, whatever, that causes me to react when other people might not be bothered by the same things? Why is that? Okay. If I really can spend time, it's a kind of meditation. It's not the kind where we just want to become still and silent, which is also incredibly valuable, going into samadhi. It's more investigation of how we operate, what our mind does, what our feelings do, and how to be with those feelings in a way that we're not burdened by them or constrained by them or pushed by them. We get dragged around by our feelings really so much that we can then become the master of those reactions. And part of that work, if it's done in conjunction with developing the Brahmaviharas, the loving kindness, the compassion, the joy and goodness wherever we find it, and equanimity, is that we can soften our own reactions. We can soften and more deeply understand, have the kind of the tools, the mechanism, the positive reinforcement for being able to actually look at ourselves, look at why we get jealous, why we get angry, why we feel hurt, why we want to lash out, why we might be carrying resentment, etc. And then make a different choice, develop a different pattern, and recognize that when we shift from the patterns that include or and reinforce the dukkha to patterns that are on a smoother path, the Buddha said, the non-dukkha path, the non-resentment, non-anger, the opposite. When we start to develop that habit or reaction, we can also be supported in that by cultivating the Brahmaviharas. And it's very valuable to also see what it is that triggers the loving kindness to come up. What is it that triggers our compassion to come up? When we find somebody really annoying, can we look more deeply at what their suffering is and kind of encourage that trigger of compassion to come up and make that a new pattern, a new approach to dealing with people, living beings, circumstances. So this is something that I feel like is really worthy of our reflection. And we want to, have a few guidelines as we examine our own mind, to not go into guilt or self-criticism, because that's just another layer of dukkha. We may think, well, I'm going to get better by beating myself up, but it doesn't really work. Have you noticed that? Yeah. So we want to have a few ground rules for ourselves, and also some trust. Maybe take a little bit of your temperature around how much you really trust yourself. Do you really see your own goodness? Do you get that you have the capacity to really be able to look at what's going on in your system? Because you will find that there is so much good there. Now, what I notice about people is that they'll often say, yeah, but that's just how you're supposed to normally act, or that's just that goodness there, that's just how you're supposed to normally act. But they're really, I want to focus on the stuff I have to change. And in a way, we want to, of course, work with the things we want to change. But if we diss the goodness in us, we're missing an opportunity to really give ourselves a lot of support and to build on the good. So, like, even in the meditation instructions the Buddha gave when he talked about mindfulness of in and out breathing. He he really encourages us to focus on the good feelings. He doesn't say, well, go look for the painful parts now and just focus on that. He says, be aware of the whole body and notice the parts that are pleasant. And why is that? It's because from that comes a feeling that can permeate the whole body and lift up our mind. So we want to be careful that this doesn't sound like, well, I'm just going to suppress the painful, because he certainly didn't advise that. He said we want to, when he talks about turning towards the dukkha, it's to understand it. We want to turn towards it with kindness, with a certain confidence in ourselves to be able to look squarely at our own patterns and with a, a basic understanding that fundamentally you are good. Now, you may not have had much of that conditioning in your life. So, a lot of us are told we're fundamentally bad. This is not a good start, but we don't have to stick with it. we can come to like really intentionally notice the good in you, the generosity, the kindness, the truthfulness, the integrity, and wherever there's unwholesome things, the Buddha's like, yeah, you know, learn how to calm that down. Learn how to bring in the wholesome. Recognize that you have that capacity. And it's here all the time, that ability. So the Brahmaviharas are cool because they're divine abidings. It's like, this is how the devas operate. I'm convinced that enlightened beings are like in these states all the time, or as far as I can tell, or maybe almost like 99%. I'm not there yet. But there are teachers, master teachers, who I feel like I have no reason to think they're not there, because they sure are very much living in a way that's fully in accordance with the Dhamma. The advice that they give, like the Buddha said, you find a teacher who can teach about these subtle things that aren't obvious from worldly perspective. They already have this wisdom. And you can kind of see that they even have a kind of propensity towards one Brahmavihara or another. You might have one that's really, really equanimous with everything. Ajahn Liam, I think it's just, has he been here? Ajahn Liam has been here. Yeah, when the Kruba Ajahns come through, make sure you show up. That's really cool. Ajahn Ganha is one of the Kruba Ajahns we visit in Thailand when we go. Um, he's just so full of metta. I heard a story that the monks were talking about how Ajahn Chah had so much metta, and he attracted so many people. People, we just want to get close to people who are exuding metta. And that Ajahn Liam said, yeah, that's why I focused on equanimity. So at that level, we get to choose, I guess. But whether you know it or not, you're on your way there. if you're practicing. I was felt very encouraged once when I was in Thailand. It was actually Ajahn Jayasaro, I think, who said it. I'm not totally sure of that because staying at Wat Pah Nanachat, the International Monastery of Ajahn Chah, for a while, my son was there as a monk, and I would spend time there. And one of the monks said, you keep practicing according to what the Buddha taught, and you will get enlightened. You will be free from suffering. And, it's just like we can make today better, this moment better, by having those Brahmaviharas right there with us. How to show up in times when things are happy. It's with metta. How to show up when things are sad, when things are, oof. Everybody's life has those events, has those situations. We show up with compassion. How to show up when people are doing good things. It's with mudita, it's with the joy and goodness. And we can always find that somewhere. And how to show up when people are really doing foolish things that create harm. It's with equanimity. And to understand how a divine abiding works is that it doesn't pull us down. No, there's no compassion fatigue because it doesn't pull us down. When we feel pulled down by compassion, it's because we haven't healed enough yet in ourselves. We have to turn to whatever's unhealed, unresolved in ourselves and support the healing there. Divine abiding. There's peacefulness in it. I think the metta, the loving kindness, is there as the underlayment for the other Brahmaviharas all the time. That love is always there. We can tune into it in every circumstance. So now I want to invite you to ask questions, maybe share something. Because I feel like when we start talking about the detail, when we get into the details, that really brings out the color of the Dhamma. And probably the best encouragement for the rest of us. Is that okay? Can we, yeah. So I probably didn't give you a chance to make the request, did I? Just, oh well.
I said, if Ayya rolls right into it, then we'll just thank her at the end. We slipped in our thank you. Yeah. All right, I have a roving mic here for questions and comments. And then Evan, you'll let us know if somebody has a question online. And we have about 20 minutes for questions and conversation.
One thing that I find personally easier is when difficulty arises, anxiety or depression or fear, these big feelings that I'm like, oh, tending, needs tending. That's almost easier because I can designate that in my head as this space that I can make for it and then let it go at some point. Um, and one thing that I've been finding a lot of confusion with is the feelings that are just so, so, so good. Um, I don't know how to tend to those because I don't really know if they should be tended to, but I'm not able, I'm also not able to have like an arm over it to above that feeling understand it. So I think my question is just how do we not exactly tackle, but just like care for those big, big good feelings?
So I have a question for you first. Are the big good feelings you're talking about
Mhm.
from sensual experience or from spiritual experience?
Um, Usually from spiritual experience.
Then it's easy.
Or no, no, no. Usually from spiritual experience, I'm able to just set it down. And with central, I'm not able to set it down.
Ah, okay. So let me see if I got this right. So, first of all, knowing the difference is so important, right? To the sensual experience, like we get what we want and we're so happy, but it doesn't last. So then we suffer. How many times, I know of someone who really wants to get a certain job and it makes sense because you need a job and this one looks like it's going to be good. And then 3 weeks later, they're like, it's like, because there's all kinds of problems, right? And of course that's how it is. And so that's the, like feeling that rush of how good it feels when, we're looking for a relationship and someone likes us and we like them, but we don't know them yet. So we're filling in all the blanks with the things we want, right? And it's not like that in the end. Okay. So, you know, tempering the high, not to be a downer, but to be realistic, to bring wisdom in when we're excited about things. And it brings peacefulness, not negativity. And the wisdom also has mindfulness with it. So when we feel that rush, it's like, yeah, okay. We can kind of smile with wisdom. It's like, okay. And I'm ready for this when it turns a corner. So that's what I would say with sensual experience. And the spiritual experience, we don't want to put it down. We want to build it up. Not in it's because spiritual joy also has wisdom with it. And the Buddha really encouraged us to notice the good feelings, the piti, the sukha, the pamoja, the good feelings of samadhi, and there are so many different ways to feel spiritual joy and happiness, and that really leads us to a deeper peace and tranquility and more ability to investigate and develop wisdom and experience insight. So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
I have a question about like when I'm meditating, I get into a state of peace pretty easily, but then I start falling asleep really easily. So, are there techniques and advice on how not to fall asleep?
Number one, get plenty of rest. That can be hard in our culture, but that's important. Notice what time of day you're more likely to stay alert. and meditate then. Tell yourself ahead of time, I'm not going to go into dullness. I'm not going to go into sleepiness. I'm going to be present. See if you can find ways that you bring a spark of energy in, and recognize that tranquility and dullness really are not, if becoming really still brings dullness, my mindfulness isn't strong enough yet. I have to have stronger mindfulness, and the brightness of the mind should be like really on. And when that's happening, then you can experience the peacefulness, but you also have that um, beautiful energy to support you. If we have a lot of trouble with dullness or drowsiness coming on, there might be something we're not looking at in our life. And it might be some kind of like, I really just want to shut off. And so kind of noticing, what is it that I don't want to see? And can I turn towards that with kindness and compassion?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Uh, as I was listening, I kept feeling this was kind of like a survival kit for life, the Brahmaviharas. And the first three hit me in the heart, and I get them. I've always struggled with the equanimity piece, so I want to be very specific. So I live down the street. I'm walking through my beautiful neighborhood, and I hear that my neighbors have had their house broken into, and it breaks my heart. And I think, what evil people. I mean, who could do this? They have these little kids, and they took their passports and their birth certificates, of all things, and all the trouble that this is going to cause. So I think, okay, there's lightness and there's dark. I've got to accept both. We live in a world of polarity. There's a duality in this world. But I don't want to gloss over it and say, oh, well, it's just life. And because then I feel like I'm ignoring it and bypassing the pain associated with it. So can you give me some guidance on how to really live equanimity to a more authentic level?
Yeah, we have to turn towards the pain, like you said. Be present with that feeling of pain, of, um, you know, um, yeah, knowing that in kind of, first of all, the social injustice that causes someone to want to steal passports and birth certificates. I mean, what's going on in their life? Right? That's sad. We can have compassion for that, but we don't want to just jump right to those things and bypass the first three noble truths, looking at the dukkha that arises in ourself and understanding it. We really want to understand it. And that task that comes with the first noble truth. How can I understand this dukkha that I experience when I think those horrible people, or, whatever? It's like, and then to see what I'm clinging to. Because you're right. If we just say, oh, yeah, that's the way it is in the world, we're not going deep enough. We're not going to the place of true understanding of conventional reality. And we're not really looking at the unconditioned. We're just spiritual bypassing. It's one of the main pitfalls on the path. We want to just like not really deal with dukkha, but we need to. And what that looks like is a process of being present with what we're experiencing so directly to really feel it, especially feeling it in the body, being present with that, feeling in the body. It's probably going to pull on all kinds of strings of our conditioning from way back, even maybe lifetimes. But we can untangle that. And when we do that over and over again, we start to see like what's really at the bottom, what's really at the core of my own personal attachments and clinging.
And as you described that, I could feel that in myself. And because when you start, I was thinking, oh, I'm applying equanimity to these other people. No, I'm applying it to my own feelings. Wow, this is huge because when you unpack that, I realize my reaction is because of my fear for things being taken away, my separation of things that I love, my insecurity around all of that.
Mhm.
That's what is triggering when I hear the story of my neighbors.
Yep,
That's really what's under it.
yep,
Wow. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you for your practice. That is great. Yeah. And the point about mindfulness or awareness being present with this experience is that that part is not afraid. That part is not blaming. That part is not. So real equanimity in that part. Yeah. 2 thumbs up.
Mariama. Okay.
Mhm.
I think we have time for maybe one more question before we break for meal offering. As you wish, Ayya.
Oh yeah, as many questions as you can fit in the whatever amount of time is okay with
We
me.
are determined to feed you.
I kind of like that.
Yes.
The part about the absence of hostility and ill will is there. Absolutely, definitely. But that doesn't seem to presuppose the compassion and it seems to acknowledge deep, deep, deep sorrow. And then when I sit with the sorrowfulness, I get to the love, but not the compassion. Love seems to be so easy, and the compassion is not, I'm not there.
So the remedy is the same. Turning towards that dukkha that's experienced because that sorrow is in ourselves, for ourselves, unhealed dukkha. So the first 3 noble truths, the being present, turning towards that sorrow in ourselves. We project it outside. We do this all the time. We try to find the reason outside, and even when we're observing the suffering of others and we are feeling that sadness, that sorrow, it's really triggering. It's exactly what was said here a minute ago. What's really getting pulled on is our own sorrow, which is dukkha. Completely understandable, living as human life, as human beings. We're so vulnerable in this big universe. If we believe we are this body and we are this collection of mental experiences and we're going to be sad, there's going to be fear, and there is going to be those things. But the Buddha is encouraging us to see that we're not this body and mind. Ultimately, looking deeply at the conventional and dealing with the dukkha we experience, the sadness we experience, being present with that and being able to experience it in the body, being able to understand it, being able to see through, investigate in that second noble truth, where's the clinging, what's the craving about, what do I want to be different than it is? Is this world ever going to be different than it is in that way? To really bring in the wisdom of the three characteristics, but not use it as a way to bypass, as was just being described, not to use it as a way to say, oh, well, this is how it is. No, it's to be present with it, to really see our own particular flavor, our own particular experience, our own sorrow, and to be present with it from that witnessing, from that mindfulness, from that position of knowing that part's not sad, that part is not depressed, that part is not anxious, that part is not afraid. When we start to really see that, we have, someone pointed out that I always put my hand over here like it's here. It kind of feels like that to me. It's like here, somewhere around here. I don't know. But to really get that feeling of, what is it like to be present and aware and not caught up in the sorrow? What is it like to step back and maybe up a little? So I heard I thought a really lovely interview by a priest named Father Jim, I think it's Jim Martin. He was interviewing Stephen Colbert, talking about the tragedy of Stephen Colbert's father and two older brothers being killed in an airplane crash when I think he was about 10 or so. And he said that his mother, who was just wrecked by this experience, he was the youngest of 11 children, and to lose these brothers and his dad at that young age. But his mother was just wrecked. But she was such a devout Catholic. And she told him, we have to see tragedy from God's perspective. Well, this is the Buddhist version of that. We see tragedy, we see our own suffering from the perspective of Dhamma. It's kind of like stepping back and kind of up to view this in context. Feel it, really feel it in the body. Be present with it and understand it. What does it mean to really know this dukkha, to really understand it? What does it mean to really feel where it's rooted? Wanting safety, wanting justice, wanting something to be different, wanting to cling to something or to get rid of something. When we really take that in, when we can witness it without being caught up in it, and we really let that move through us until it ceases, until it resolves, and we can experience that whole cycle from the feeling of the dukkha to the cessation of the dukkha. And really touching in on let's get to the bottom of this in my own conditioning, in my own psyche. When we start to do that over and over again, whenever we experience dukkha, I tell people I picked this up as a practice. I was going to work through it, journal about it, go through this process. Every time I was triggered, I told my daughter, and she said, "What else are you going to have time for?" Nothing like kids to really just give you a good mirror image. Anyway, it really pays off. You start to realize, hey, I only have one problem. I don't have like a whole raft of them. It's only one. So it's that clinging right there, that misunderstanding right there of who I am or who I'm not. Don't jump immediately to a Brahmavihara that's going to help you just cover it over. That's not where it's at. The Brahmaviharas are there to help us to be tools of support and abidings that are filled with wisdom so we can see the truth. Nice meal, huh? It's been so nice to spend time with people here and see old friends and some folks who've come in who are pretty far away. Really nice to see them and meet some of you for the first time too. I know we haven't had a lot of time to just talk with each other, but sharing the Dhamma together and having this chance to be in this beautiful space and really feels very settled in here. You know, during one of the short conversations here and break, said this afternoon, one person immediately said, "Hey." Yeah. And I really like reflecting on uncertainty. I was remembering something that happened a really long time ago now. I was at a Baigiri in Ajahn Pasano. You know, he's been my teacher for maybe 25 years. Officially, I took dependence on him, I think, in 2003. But one of the earlier on, I was given a Dhamma talk one night at a Baikiri, and he started out talking about the neighbor of a Baikiri. Her name was Mary, I think. You remember her? No. She had just died. And he said that she wasn't sick very long, I don't think, but he told the story of how she had been acting in a local play, local theater group. And she couldn't finish the run of the play because she was sick, and she got checked, and they made an emergency kind of surgery, or just right away. And when they looked inside, her body was full of cancer, and they just closed it up. And Jim Posner went to see her in the hospital. And she said, I know that I'm going to die pretty soon. And I know that I might not even be able to go home. But I'm just so grateful. So grateful for the Dhamma. And I don't think she was Buddhist before the monastery moved in next door. Wouldn't that be nice? Just have a monastery move in next door, change your life. Yeah. Yeah. And Ajahn Pasano talked about how we all have our plans and we think we know what's going to happen, but we really don't. We really don't. There's, uncertainty is a reality with us all the time. And when I heard this story, I said, that's what I want. I want to be able to have that reaction when something like that happens. And that's been a really good motivator all these years to, take the Buddha seriously when he tells us to reflect on death and reflect on loss and aging and sickness, and really see not just what's uncertain, but also what we can rely on. The Dhamma is not uncertain. It's constant and available in the present moment to all of us. And that is such a beautiful truth to be experienced individually by the wise. It's, to really start to be able to experience that shift away from being caught up in and so buffeted by conventional reality and all of its changingness, the worldly winds, the anicca, the dukkha, and really take in that anatta part. This isn't mine. This stuff that changes all the time, this isn't mine. It's not me. And that means everything that is conditioned is sankhara. All these sankhara. I think we really are able to take that in and see it when we practice shifting into that witness that doesn't change. And that is not just like nibbana way out there somewhere, but that through awareness, You know, like I was talking about this morning, that kind of stepping back and witnessing all of the changing. It's like a big parade, just coming through all the time. Thoughts and feelings and forms, all sense input and all the things that are happening and coming and going, and to start to recognize, and we can't control hardly any of it. We can control our own speech and our own actions and what we intentionally think about. And the rest, it's like, what a panorama of change. But to be able to observe it, to be able to be present to it without the attachment, or seeing, like when there's attachment, seeing that, we're still seeing it from that place that isn't attached. And to have that sense, I mean, what happens when we make that shift to observing, to witnessing? And really explore that. What is that? Is that who you are? Not a self, but a ground of being. You know, when Ajahn Chah, one of his disciples, says that there's really no separation between us. How do you make sense of that? The realization of Nibbana means there's no separate self. These things are, everything we think of as a separate self, as me. It's not constant, it's not stable. So that's not us, that's not who we are. One time I told a story recently, and I don't know if any of you have heard me talk about it, but I was in a Qigong class. This was a long time ago. I was training in, did some training in medical Qigong. And one of the classes, you learn a lot about working with energy in the body, and really see the changefulness of things. But I hadn't been exposed to the Dhamma yet in any kind of formal way, so just learning. And the teacher had us do this exercise where you'd sit across from another person and they would ask you, "Who are you?" How many of you have done this kind of thing? Some of you, yeah. It sounds a little weird, but the experience I had was really interesting because they're asking me, "Who are you?" And then I'd say something, one of the many labels or roles or whatever, and then all they say is, after you say something from a mother, "But who are you? Who are you?" So keep going, peeling off the layers. And then you start to, I think, at least what happened to me, you start to really just open up inside to what can arise there. And see, this is what we need to do when we practice looking at our dukkha. We have to open up to our intuition. We have to open up to the Dhamma arising in us. Like if I answer a question from the Dhamma seat, I can't answer it out of my intellect. If I do, it's superficial in a certain kind of way, even if I think I know a lot about the subject. The real answer comes from within, comes from the Dhamma flowing through us. So in that situation, when I'm answering this, who are you? It got down to this energy stream, like a column of energy just flowing right through my center core. And I knew it wasn't me. And I knew that that's the same core for everyone. That was trippy. I think there are a lot of different ways and a lot of different modalities. And when we really dig into the depth of it, it's all revealing the same reality. No matter where people are living or what their culture has been, they're working with the same spiritual material. We're all in this same situation of conventional reality and spiritual. The mystical experience. So it's helpful when we get glimpses of some of these things that are just like, you can't really explain it from ordinary consciousness. Yeah. That's okay, because we can start to recognize that there are those things that change, and there are glimpses of that which does not change. And we want to spend more time there. And this is what meditation is for. This is what moral virtue is for. So we have a clear mind. We don't have to be caught up in the tangle of regret and the trouble that, we cause ourselves when we are not virtuous. And when we do things that are not in accordance with Dhamma, we can recover from that. Someone asked me about, because sometimes I talk about a path of spiritual recovery. And the question was, did the Buddha talk about that? He didn't use those words, but he clearly demonstrated it. Like in the lump of salt sutta, if we do something that results in negative karma, and we do a lot of good things, really dilutes the strength of that negative karma. Or, Mahamoggallana having been Mara in the past. Do you know about this? He talks about it in one of the suttas, that he was Mara in a previous lifetime. I don't know how you stand on the many lifetimes thing, but I'm totally convinced. Watch those grandchildren get born and then they've got those things going on already. I know that's just not random. Anyway, anyway, yeah. Anyhow, in the traditional material and commentary, maybe somewhere talks about Mahamoggallana having been Mara 22 times or something. I was like, wow, how do you be Mara for 22 lifetimes and then become a chief disciple of the Buddha? There's definitely a path of spiritual recovery. And this is part of the advantage of changing things changing, things being uncertain. We might think, I'm like this, some good thing, some bad thing, but it's really uncertain. It can be changed. We want to keep leaning, inclining towards Nibbana, leaning towards cultivating the wholesome. Because life gets so much easier, so much easier to make up. And if there wasn't any way to recover from the mistakes we've made in the past, there would be no way to wake up. So there is that path of spiritual recovery. As soon as we realize we've done something, or we recall doing something, and just look for that path of spiritual recovery. It's something we can do, do good things and dedicate it to the people we've hurt, even if we can't talk to them anymore, maybe they're not around anymore. But we can heal that. The Buddha talking about doing, like I said earlier, doing the opposite, choosing non-anger instead of anger. We keep doing that, pretty soon the pattern that brings up the anger is just going to dissolve. Don't even have it anymore. And if we keep memories of the unskillful alive and keep going over that in our mind, we're actually perpetuating that forward. We don't want to do that. So we want to let it go and do the opposite and say to yourself, well, I don't do that anymore. So whenever we think we are, it's kind of a trap because it's all uncertain. It's changeable. And the good news is that we can make those choices. And you're already making really good choices. You wouldn't be here. And come here on a Sunday. This is a good choice. Not because we're here. Somebody will be here. The whole place is imbued with this goodness. Ayya Cittananda said something to me at lunchtime, like she loves swimming in the soup of goodness. Did you know you were soup ingredients? Yeah, cool. Yeah. So we get to form things. And when we start to see that, this outcome of, okay, when something big happens, I want to have this kind of inner stability and I want to be connected to that joy and that gratitude, even if it's really hard. There's going to be hard parts. I'm sure for Mary, there were hard parts about that disease and how things unfolded until the body was done. But when we can keep coming back to what's wholesome, what we're grateful for, and call in all the soup ingredients we can for the goodness soup, then we can, really set the course, follow the course, or follow the course of the Dhamma, follow the course the Buddha set for us, that he described. I love that he didn't make up a theory or a philosophy, that he just reported on reality, because then it's available for you. We can also see that and experience it ourselves, and we are encouraged to do that. And we are encouraged to encourage others, which is what this place exists for. Really wonderful. So you probably already have some tools to prepare, you know, those 5 recollections. I've not gone beyond death. I've not gone beyond sickness. I've not gone beyond aging. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. It can be hard to understand what that's talking about in the beginning. And also that you're an heir to the good karma. When you can trust it. Sometimes if you're worried about people you love, but you know they're so good, you can think, okay, they're going to be all right. Whatever happens, they're going to be all right. They die. People tell me about their loved ones. They die and they talk about how good they are, their mother, their father. And a long time ago, someone's son passed away and they were talking about what a good kid he was. And it's like, yeah, trust the karma. And so we make karma that we can trust to bring about goodness, to bring about opportunity. Very tempted to tell the Harry story. Okay.
I've heard it probably about 60 times, 6 or so times a year, 10 years, you know. It's a good story.
Yeah, she's my bellwether. If I write up a description of something we're gonna do for a retreat, and she looks at it and she says, I'm not coming. Well, that's it, I could throw that out. Okay, so a few years ago, when my mom was still alive, she wanted to go back to Illinois and northern Indiana and see the places where she was. She had already had a heart attack. She almost died. She probably wasn't going to be around that much longer. And who knows? But there we are, uncertainty. Anyway, we took a trip back. And a bunch of my cousins got together and they invited us over. So there we were suddenly. She didn't want to plan see people. I don't know. She was more interested in places for some reason at that point. But a bunch of my cousins and their partners and we're sitting around the living room and the guys started talking about Vietnam because that's my era. And one of the cousins I was close to growing up, her husband, his name is Harry, and he was talking about his experience going to Vietnam. And I found it really fascinating. And I wanted more details. So the next time I went back, I asked him more about it. And he told me this story. So he said when he graduated from high school, he said there were only 3 options. You could go to college. And he said it wasn't college material. Or you could go to Canada. And he said, I've never been north of Dalton, which was the town north, just north of where he grew up. And so I wasn't going to Canada. Or you could go to Vietnam. And so he went to Vietnam. And he said that in basic training, he's a super devout Christian. And when he was in basic training, he said he had a vision. He started teaching him how to, use a rifle. He had this vision of himself sitting in a tree in shooting an enemy soldier in the head. And he said he could see the hole in the blood, and he said, I can't do that to anybody. I don't care who they are. So he said from that day on, and as he's going over to Vietnam, he kept praying that he wouldn't kill anyone. That was really, he said, I didn't want to kill anyone. I didn't want to shoot my gun. And he said he thought, well, with God, all things are possible. Not probable, but they're possible. So when he gets to Vietnam, there are guys coming off the plane. Apparently, it was right after the Battle of Hamburger Hill, and the 101st Airborne Division had lost a lot of troops. And they wanted the first 50 guys off that plane to go into their unit. And Harry was among them, and he didn't have any training in anything airborne. But he was just infantry, and he was one of those guys who would be on a helicopter. And you remember those pictures of the helicopter kind of hovering, and then half a dozen guys jump out and they fight? That was him. But he said they sent out the 3 helicopters on 3 different mountaintops. And there'd be fighting on the other 2, but the one he got dropped off, there were no enemy there. And then that happened again and again and again. And he said after a few months of that, every mission, there were never any enemy where he was and fighting on the other places. And he says, I'm falling asleep on the copter. One of the other guys are saying, how can you fall asleep? Army intelligence verified there's 1,200 enemy soldiers on this mountain. He said there's nobody there. And there was nobody there. And he said he walked through camp and he'd hear this voice, that's a guy, that's a guy. And he said someone new would come and someone else would say to him, are you afraid? Are you worried? He said, just stick with Harry. And Harry's pretty funny. I mean, he's just a really normal guy, but he's pretty funny. He said to me, yeah, they tell him, Harry goes down the hill to sit down and have his C rations. You take your C rations, you go sit right next to him and have your C rations. If Harry goes out into the forest to take a dump, he follows. He's like, no, I'm not into that. But he said it was really amazing and way too strange to be coincidence. He said he was sent to walk on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and it's like I-5. It's always Viet Cong, but he said nobody was there. And there'd be a mound next to the road. Usually there are enemy soldiers hiding in there. They go past, they're approaching that. They say, well, somebody should check it out. Come on, Harry, you go check it out. He goes, checks and there's nobody there. Yeah, he said he flew 27 missions. Never fired his gun, never saw the enemy. He said he'd be in a camp and the sergeant would come by, pick up his gun and shoot it into the air. And Harry's like, what are you doing? I'm getting the rust out of your barrel because you never shoot this thing. And then they were getting a new commander. The commander was being replaced with a new guy. And he said, I'm just to show you I'm a nice guy, I'm gonna take the person who's been here the longest and send them back to base camp. They're never going to have to come out and fight again on their tour. Men said, well, that's Harry, but you can't take him. He's our good luck charm. And they circulated a petition, 200 guys signed it. You can't take Harry. Well, the commander was having none of this. You guys are crazy. Get on the plane. So Harry said he was back in base camp a few weeks later, and that same commander was there. He walked by and he said, I'm this close to believing your crazy story because we've just done nothing but fighting since you left. They mailed him a Medal of Honor or gold, I can't remember now what the medal was. And he says, I feel guilty because I didn't do anything. But if you fly 25 missions, you get that. Bronze Star, I think it is, something like that. So he's been teaching Sunday school for 50 years, and he said, when the boys are rowdy, then he says, I got a story for you. And he tells the story, he said, well, now that I have your attention, open your Bible. And Harry said to me, there were a lot of people praying for me. The church was praying, my mom was praying. And my thinking is there were a lot of people praying for all those guys out there. We were all concerned. And I think it's something more. And Harry told me he doesn't like to go fishing or hunting. His son-in-law would like him. No, he doesn't want to kill anything. So I'm thinking about the precepts, and the precepts are protective. And my guess is Harry's been keeping that not killing precept for lifetimes. I told Ajahn Pasano this story, and he said, man, he's got some powerful devas protecting him. And I said, yeah, but don't you think it's keeping precepts like that for lifetimes? And he said, well, that's how you get powerful devas. But it's true, it's like, if you want that help, you got to do your part. Yeah, so things are uncertain. But I think we stack the deck. In a totally good way, with a commitment and an appreciation for just how powerful our actions really are. And on that, I think we should meditate a little while. Do you have any questions or reflections? Something you'd like to talk about? Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
I'd just like to say that I listened to your talk yesterday morning, and it was lovely. And then I went to the march in White Salmon, and we had 500 people show up.
In White Salmon, wow.
And it was wonderful. It was loving, it was peaceful, it was community building. And I'd like to thank you for your insights before I went. And I think I went with a soft heart, and it was lovely.
Great.
So thank you for that.
That's great. We need more and more and more and more of that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. It's been so wonderful. Is my memory correct that you had spent some time with Ajahn Panyavado?
Yes.
I was curious if you would want to share anything kind of from your time with him.
Well, first to say that Ajahn Panyawado was British, and he became a monk and then later went to Thailand and lived with Ajahn Mahabua, I think for something like 40 years. And I had a very powerful dream of Ajahn Mahabua, and it really opened something up for me. I can tell you more about that if you want to know, but I decided that my next visit to Thailand, I wanted to meet him and just pay respects. And so we went to Ajahn Mahabua's monastery, but he wasn't there. And he, it's hard to kind of know when teachers like that will be around and when they won't be around. And so we stayed until he came back. And during that time, I was able to talk with Ajahn Panyawado. Being a Western monk in Thailand so long, the other Western monks kind of, collected around him, and he would come out and sit in this one area. And my son was a monk, and he was staying there also at that time. And he and some of the other Western monks would come and talk to Ajahn Panyawado, and I was there also. And it was just really a beautiful chance to ask questions and talk about Dhamma. And he shared a lot of interesting Dhamma with us. One of the conversations was among the monks were talking about whether or not it's okay to eat more than one meal a day, because trained in Thailand, generally there's one meal in the monastery around 8 or 8:30 in the morning, usually after alms round, and then that's it for the day, except for some allowables maybe, or tea later in the day. And kind of this, the Western monasteries were having breakfast, and is that a corruption of the tradition, and like is all going to hell in a handbasket or what, And it's interesting because you feel so much spiritual power from these Guru Mahajans and in the monasteries, and then you just kind of, in the beginning, you don't kind of know what's the magic sauce, And so I think people really want to stick to exactly what was done before. Maybe we'll lose the plot if we relax anything. And yeah, of course, the climate's different in the West, and various reasons for adding more sustenance in a place like England. So this conversation was happening. I don't remember what Ajahn Panyawada said about it, but I had another dream. And it was Ajahn Mahabua showing me 3 containers. They were like these plastic boxes. You use a lot of these in Thailand because they have the locks on them, and it keeps out most of the pests. It's jungle life, So, and there were these 3 boxes, and Ajahn Mahabua was telling me that the first one is 1 meal a day, and the second one is 2 meals a day, and the third one is 3 meals a day. And he said you can get enlightened regardless of which one you choose. And I should kind of back up a little, because I already had a strong impression that and knew that I wanted to become a nun. and was talking with Ajahn Panyawado a fair bit about that, about what form for women. And this was a long time ago. It was probably 2003. And he, he was talking about the pros and cons of different forms for women, monastic forms. And when in this dream, and Ajahn Mahaprabhu was saying, you can get enlightened no matter which one you choose. Well, of course, the 1 meal a day is the Thai style, 1 meal a day, and 2 meals a day is maybe living in a Western monastery where you get 2 meals a day, and 3 meals a day is the lay life. And so when I reflected on that dream, I felt like whatever else is in the box is also important. Gotta make sure. Yeah. So that was one thing. Yeah, Ajahn Panyawado, we talked about God because I had a lot of faith in the religion I had before I came to Buddhism, and there's a strong faith streak in me. And I had been reflecting a lot on why I was positing that there is a God that, and what is that being up to or whatever, it's like, and what are the things that I would feel like, I think now I would say a lot of PT and, spiritual energy, and I would think of that as the presence of God. But then, the influence of the Dhamma and the teachers and talking about things that, and I knew I had to investigate, like what am I really experiencing without adding ideas and views and kind of anything to it. And when I was talking with Ajahn Panyawadu about it, he said, well, one thing he said was, like when I told him when I chant, there's this softness around my mouth. And it's like, right. And he said, that's samadhi. But anyhow, he said, if people, well, my discovery, my insight was that I wanted to think of God as a being that I could relate to, because I wanted to solidify my sense of self. It's like believing in God had that sense of self kind of relationship component. Anyway, Ajahn Panyawado's answer was, if people really want to know the truth and they investigate what God is, they'll find the truth. And in the years since, I really feel like God, as I thought of God then, is a deva, one of those protective devas that maybe Harry had on his side. But it's so much more concrete, and I think powerful to recognize that we need to know for ourselves. It's not a situation where someone else is going to save us. Yeah. Ajahn Panyawado had cancer. He knew he had cancer at that time. And he talked about it very matter-of-factly. Not worried. Didn't seem too affected by it. Yeah, it was really beautiful to talk with him. Kind of get a sense of this person who probably had little or no work left to do. There's a hand over here. Okay.
Just following up on Ryan's question, I wonder if you might talk about your original dream and just a little bit more of that faith orientation to practice and what's been important about that for you, how you've navigated
Yeah, the original dream. So I was going to Thailand every year and sometimes twice a year to visit my son. And of course, a lot of it was about it being in the monasteries in Thailand. And we would go to visit other monasteries, Krubajans, and he arrived kind of late in the day, evening this time, and there was a lot of activity in the monastery. It was monks, rushing around, sweeping everything, cleaning everything, and that's not ordinary around 6 p.m. or something. It's usually not what people are up to, and my son told me that Ajahn Tui was coming. Ajahn Tui's reputation as a Krubajan was very high, and everybody was excited to have him come. And he was supposed to come a couple of days earlier, but then it was delayed, and so he was now about to arrive. And I had brought gifts for the monks, and I got the inside intel from my son, like what kind of gifts are really going to be good for the monks. And I had a bunch of LED flashlights with me. That was a new thing then. And so my son, I'm not going to go through the video details, but anyway, I gave him all the gifts so he could tell me who to give them to, basically. And he told me to give this one to Ajahn Tui, but he said don't give it through someone else, give it to him yourself directly. So when Ajahn Tui came, everyone in the community went to the sala, and he's sitting in the abbot's seat, and the abbot is on the floor in front of him translating, and there was this point where it seemed like the right time to, on my knees, go up and offer him this flashlight. And when he received it, he was pointing at the package, really excited, and it's like, and it's Thai. I don't know. And the abbot said he knows exactly what this is. And he said, this will stay bright for 10,000 hours. And then he said, wouldn't it be good if your mind stayed bright for 10,000 hours? And then he looked at me and he said, do you understand? And I kind of went, and then when I made my way back to where I was sitting in the back, I just felt like a humming through my whole system, this huge area of my chest, just vibrating. And then I don't remember what he said, what the Dhamma talk was about, but I went back to the kuti I was staying in, and I went to sleep. And then I was dreaming, it was a super bright, weird dream where Ajahn Tui was introducing me to this other monk. And the name Mahabua was just like pounding and flashing like in neon. And this monk was telling me, you can get enlightened, but you have to practice relentlessly, relentlessly. And there was this pounding, you gotta practice it, but you can do it. And it was this whole pounding feeling. And then I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, wow, that is so weird. Then I went back to sleep and it started all over again. It was the same thing going on and on. And then I woke up in the morning and I thought, that's so weird. I'm not telling anybody about that. I think I'm crazy. And then there was this knock at the door. It was before 6 o'clock. And it was my son. And I thought, that's weird because this is kind of on the women's side of the monastery. And it's not in the women's section exactly, but it was unexpected for him to come at that time just before going on alms round. But he said to me, oh, I have this book that I think you should have. And he gives me this book and it's Ajahn Mahabua. And I had not known his name before this dream. And I looked and I saw a photo of him and I'm like, oh, that's him. And so I thought, okay, I have to tell my son. So I told him about it. And my son told the abbot, his abbot at that time, and he talked to me about it. And he said, this is a good thing and you can fuel your practice for a long time. And you should, when you meditate, reflect on it. And I would really recommend that for any insight that arises for you. Take it into meditation and sit with it and reflect on it because more can be revealed about it. And what came up, became clear was, first of all, even though I had been in ministry training at the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment, I really deep down wondered if that was possible for me. You know, with all the stupid things I've done, is that really possible? And I feel like Ajahn Mahabua really removed that doubt, or that dream really removed that doubt. And as I reflected more, it really removed the doubt in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. To know that the Sangha can operate that way, to really help, really support that kind of spiritual energy. And then I wanted to go visit Ajahn Mahabua and pay respects and make offerings. And it's kind of interesting because I talked with Ajahn Panyawado about the dream. And I'm sure I talked to him about the dream with the boxes. And he was like, yeah, don't talk to Ajahn Mahabua about it. It's good advice. And there was a bhikkhuni, and it was a good friend of mine who said she's also had some powerful experiences in dreams and visions. And she said, I think sometimes it's not really a conscious thing for someone like that, like Ajahn Mahabua saying. She said, I think that there's something about one's own wish to awaken and about that teacher's commitment to help that meets in this space. And it's not even really a conscious thing. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's a lot more going on than we think. And faith is related to the faith to be open to things that are not logical, that do not make sense on a conventional level. I mean, samadhi is an altered state of consciousness. It's a way of being open to what's beyond this conventional material world. And I really think that's really the stuff we're made of, not these physical forms. Whatever it is that, no, I don't think that's quite the right phrasing. It's like there are ways in which we can make ourselves available to awakening. And we do it through all of our practice, through our sila, through our samadhi, through developing panya, all of the effort we put in, our desire to awaken that is not goal-oriented or coming from a personality view of I want to get something. Whenever we do that, we're stuck because we're just coming from the personality. But to be open to the mystical and develop that faith in and knowing that you can know it yourself. I mean, this direct knowing of Dhamma isn't about figuring it out. It's about that direct experience that the Buddha had. That comes from letting go of the intellect and letting go of our idea of self and who we think we are. And so it's like the faith to step off into the unknown. Yeah. Oh, Holly.
Hello, dear Ayas and the PFOD community. I have a lot of trees surrounding this property in town, and I've begun walking around and saying nice things to whatever devas might be there or want to be there. What do you think the devas would want to know from me or hear from me or see in me? How do I support them?
I think it's through the Dhamma. I think it is sharing the Dhamma, the blessings. I mean, it's my experience that devas really love the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And I think it's because they're named in there. One time I was staying at Ajahn Brahms, and my son was there also, who was a monk, and at Ajahn Brahms, they don't do very many formal meetings, as few as possible, I think is his goal. He gives one talk on a Wednesday night, and that's pretty much the only meeting, but it's okay for the monks if they want to get together and do morning puja and stuff. So they were doing morning puja, and they were chanting, going to chant the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first sermon of the Buddha. And I was in my kuti, and I was asleep. And suddenly I felt this fluttering in my face. And I woke up. Oh, if I jump into you know, my clothes and run up there, I'll be on time. And I was just, and I looked around the room and there was nothing in there. No giant moth, no. It was like, when I really get the feeling that the Devas love that. So reciting that Dhamma for them and chanting it and
Well, it's
um,
really interesting, Aya, because what I did last night was I recorded a bunch of sutras that had the devas in them, and I walked around with my headset on this morning, and I spoke them out loud to the trees as I walked around.
cool. Cool. I think more of that. Think about what fills you with spiritual energy and joy and just share that with them. Yeah. Mm.
Thanks. My question is sort of regarding it's kind of regarding healing and specifically from past actions. And I guess what I find is for myself, it doesn't feel like it takes a great deal of effort to forgive someone else. But when applied inwardly, it seems oftentimes, even when I think I have, or I think I am, that I'll revisit it and it feels like I haven't.
Mm.
And I wondered if you could speak to that at all.
Yeah, sometimes we can feel pretty stuck with that. Some memory that comes back or some regret. The more we, first of all, the more we do the opposite from whatever that was, or share merit, do good things, that having that generosity, developing generosity, making every action a gift. The more we can do that, one thing that happens is that the sense of self gets reduced. The more we can come back to just raw humility and, really feel the determination to not do that again. And the wish for that healing for anyone that got harmed and for ourselves. The more the sense of self softens and we start to see others and ourselves on the same way, then we can forgive ourselves more easily. Because why are we not forgiving ourselves? Because we've got this image of me and I did this bad thing. And it's very much selfing, even the regret. So we want to have that positive, healthy regret that says, okay, I've learned from this and I don't want to ever do that again. And I'm determined not to do that again. And if I fall into it again, I'm gonna up the determination. And so the key with all of the vipaka karma, all of what comes back, is to again and again be present with it, with our awareness, and see it all the way through its cycle. It's like that regret comes and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. And I'm not that person anymore. Just really see that, feel that feeling, and then let it dissolve. And then we keep doing that and we don't buy into it. So don't go thinking, oh yeah, I did that bad thing. don't give it any energy in that direction. And eventually it just will soften and not keep coming back. It's like we're changing our habit of thinking. And we're cutting off the past because we're living differently now. And, when we talk about how this body and mind, all of its processes are insubstantial, I get that sense that it's not a solid thing. It's changing all the time. Well, then we're not even that person who did that anymore. And the place to put our attention is what we're doing now. And our intention to go forward in a good way. And the more we think like that, the more those actions from the past fade. The more good that we do, the more diluted that negative karma becomes. Until it just has no ground to sprout in. Question?
Thank you, Ayya. First, I just wanted to recognize and acknowledge what I'm sure everybody in the room noticed, that within seconds of your Dhamma talk ending, there was a thunderous pounding on the roof here that went on for a couple of minutes. And I think my mind, having just heard your story about Harry, just went to, it's the devas, that are gathered for the Dhamma talk, and they're just expressing sadhu, 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 and because of the kind of the nature of my mind, I was holding that as more of like a funny thing, like imagine that, but then I said, no, it's not a funny thing. I know, Jessica, I was talking to you about this a few months ago about what you're talking about, the intuition and the opening to, for lack of another word, the divine is something I've been calling mythos, is opening to mythos, and as a man, I find that this is a bit like cracking a nut, and I don't mean to generalize, but I do find that my mind tends to be very muscular in the area of logos and reasoning, and I'm so tired of that, and I'm really yearning for that, the mythos to blossom, and I'm trying to open myself to that. And if you have any words that might address that and encourage me, I appreciate it.
Well, the desire to do it is such a great leap forward. And recognizing that the thinking mind isn't going to get us where we want to go with this. And not to like diss the thinking mind, because we need it. We need it for learning the Dhamma. And we can use thought as a meditation and really let ourselves listen to the mind. But I think this idea of finding ways to practice using your intuition. I remember, well, there are various ways we can do this. It's like, when I was talking about focusing, for example, I don't know if you know that book or that process. Eugene Gendland wrote this book, focusing And I might have explained where it came from, but in the beginning of the book, he talked about how he was a student under Carl Rogers, Carl Rogers, and he was one of the psychologists who they were trying to understand why therapy works for some people and it doesn't for others. And they started doing videos of people getting in their first and second or whatever in their therapy. And they started to realize that they could predict who was going to make progress in therapy, who wouldn't. And they said they thought that they were gonna, I didn't tell you this yesterday, did I? Okay, just I told somebody recently. But they thought they were gonna find out something about the therapists, a technique that they were using or an approach or something. But that wasn't it, it was the people, the clients. Because what they saw was that when something came up, a person who would stop and really check inside and wait for an answer, just what is going on, they're the ones who would make good progress. And even graduate students could predict accurately just by watching this. So not that graduate students don't know anything, you're kind of just starting, hopefully, Anyway, so there are different ways to really kind of practice with this. And when I was in ministry school, we did a lot of this kind of stuff. We learned focusing, we learned how to guide other people through that process of, it's like the Four Noble Truths, the first three Noble Truths, you feel the dukkha, whatever form it's taking, and you feel where it is in the body. And Eugene Genland, I never knew how to pronounce his name, but he's the one who coined the phrase felt sense. And so you get that felt sense, which you can't really describe with words. And you're like listening internally. And we used a thing called a journal workshop. It's a book, and it has all kinds of methods. If you could create a retreat or a day-long or something with a journal workshop, but with ideas of guiding people and giving them ways to journal. And you could like ask a question and then write down the answer without thinking about it. Or sometimes people will write a question with the right hand and with the left hand answer. Yeah. And just ways to just open up, like that, reflecting on an insight, just having that in your mind, in the back of your mind, and just waiting for, in meditation, what might fill in. Or a question. I used to, learning about the Dhamma, I used to have, like a question of, what did the Buddha mean by that? And just have that question in the back of your mind, something you want to understand, but you don't want to just understand the book description. That's not it. Just to know it inside, to really know it. And so I feel like this is just an essential part of awakening. And Ajahn Sumedho's been talking about, really listening. Like, he talks about the sound of silence, but the real thing there is listening. Listening to what arises. Because we discover this ourselves. And I think you can, like I said, the desire to allow this aspect, this ability that we have as human beings to flourish is such a huge step. And then noticing ways to practice it and you giving yourself the time. Because meditation is way more than just sitting down and sticking with a meditation object. That's a good start. Yeah. And don't try to get anything. Don't try to achieve anything. Just open up to the miracle, really. So I think we're gonna chant some blessings. And we're gonna pass around this basket for anybody who hasn't had a chance to dip into the mysterious basket. And use those for reminding yourself of something important, like listening to your intuition, maybe, something like that. Could you give her the microphone? Yes. Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
This is the victory chant. Everyone go get enlightened now, okay? It's gonna help. Ready? Okay. Jayanto Bodhiamule Sakyanana Diwadano Ewang Tawang Vijayo Ho Hijaya Sujaya Mangale Aparajita Palanke Sise Patavipokare Abhiseke Sababhutanam Agapato Pamodati Sunakatam Sumangalam Supapatang Suhutitam Sukano Sumahuto Jasuitam Brahmachari Supadakinam Kaya kamang vacha kamang padakina mano kamang panidite padakina nikat manalabantate padakine. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Buddhas. May you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Dhamma. May you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Sangha. May you ever be well.